All right, why don't I hear anything? Oh, that's why. Hello, and welcome to the Creative Control Room Podcast pre-show, behind the scenes. This is where we go around and make sure everything is up and running and working as it's supposed to. Check all our lights and our audio. And yeah, so let's do that right now. All right, so YouTube is up. I'm going to go to Facebook. What is today, by the way? Sunday, July 18th. Oh, my dad's birthday is tomorrow. So this is interesting. Restream. I'm going to have to reconnect Periscope and Facebook. Because, oh, by the way, my dog is here. Tum Tum. Say hello. Hey. Say hello. Oh, he wants to leave. We're going to let him go. There we go. Yeah, he's going to just cause problems. So Restream is interesting. The last two episodes, it has not been live streaming. I probably have to reconnect those two. But we're up and running everywhere else. So that's fine. All right, so let's go around and check audio. Audio looking good over here. No dropped frames, which is fantastic. Camera 2, camera 3, excuse me. All right. There's that. What else we got? All the lights are on. Hit and record on the Rodecaster. Very good. And then make sure our intro is working. Yep. Or not intro, but our little animation. And I think that's about it. So yeah, Sunday, July 18th. I guess there's really nothing special to discuss about today. So we might as well get into it because we have a lot to go over today. I've got a lot of notes, a lot of things to discuss, a lot of good information to put out there. So let's do that, shall we? What's this, episode 84? Yeah, episode 84. Hello, and welcome to episode number 84 of the Creative Control Room Podcast, a show for creators, makers, and doers, where my goal is to help you make to the max. My name is Ryan, and in this episode, we're going to talk about whether or not gear matters. And spoiler alert, it does, except for when it doesn't. And let's roll that temporary intro, shall we? Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. This is the Creative Control Room Podcast. If you are new to the show here, this is a show for content creators. If you're into photography, video creation, FPV, drone flying, podcasting, live streaming, any of those things, which also happen to be things that I am currently interested in, then you might enjoy it here. This is where I come to share the knowledge that I have accumulated in those areas and also talk a little bit about the various projects that I happen to be working on at any given time. So if that's something you might be interested in, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, smash it wherever you happen to be watching or listening, and follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram and Twitter. Still working on fixing the intro and fixing that little follow animation at the bottom there. It is what it is. We'll get to it eventually. Your boy is busy. Anyway, thank you for being here. It is Sunday, July 18th. Lots and lots to talk about today, so let's get to it. The first thing I wanted to talk about is I've got a new upgrade to the studio. You can't actually, there's two upgrades. The first being this guy right here. So it's a little desk fan that clips onto my shelf, because I had a fan here previously, and it was just taking up space, and it was so I got a new one. And it clips to the shelf, and that's not really that interesting. But what is more interesting is that I have upgraded my GPU, aka my video card or graphics card. So if you've been following the GPU space or the computer components space at all, and I don't follow it that closely, but GPUs, graphics cards, are in very high demand right now because they are used when it comes to Bitcoin mining. Now, Bitcoin prices have fallen a little bit, and Bitcoin's not as much in the news anymore. But because of the popularity of Bitcoin and because so many people were mining Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, getting a graphics card was almost impossible. Like finding a decent graphics card was very hard to do. So I was able to finally find one, and I think this is just an assumption, but they were cracking down in China on Bitcoin miners, I guess, from an energy standpoint. I could be wrong about this, so don't quote me on any of this, but I think it had something to do with the amount of energy required to produce or to mine Bitcoin, and China was cracking down on that, which means that I think they had a surplus of all these graphics cards now because they could no longer mine with graphics cards. Again, I could be way off on this, but that combined with the reduction in popularity of Bitcoin put a few of these graphics cards back on the market. The problem is that they are still very overpriced. So I paid probably more than double retail value for the card that I got. But my previous graphics card was the GTX 1080 Gaming X, I believe. And I managed to find a 3070, an RTX 3070 Ti Gaming X MSI graphics card. So, and even when I bought my first card, the 1080, it was around another time when we were also seeing shortages of graphics cards because of Bitcoin mining. It was kind of like the previous Bitcoin spike in prices when it was really popular. And I paid more than I probably should have then. Doing the same again this time. I guess I'm just destined to always overpay for graphics cards. But I got it, and I wish I would have done some benchmark tests before and after changing it out. I'm a little ashamed to say this. If I'm being completely honest, I haven't noticed an enormous difference in just processing. And the reason I got it was not so much for gaming or Bitcoin mining, but for video editing. I do notice a speed increase in Premiere Pro. It plays back like 4K footage and footage with a lot of effects on it much more seamlessly, a lot less lag. I can play it back a little bit higher quality. Render times are also improved as well. So at the end of the day, I mean, I think it was good. It was a good investment. Robert's in the chat. What's going on, Robert? Looking and sounding good today. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So the graphics card, I'm gonna say it was a good investment. Also, it's helpful when it comes to what I'm doing right now, because when I record and when I stream, I do it all from the graphics card. And when you have a more powerful graphics card, you can handle processing video a little bit better. And I've also noticed too, because one of the issues that I was having, especially with OBS with the 1080 graphics card, is when I would open OBS, I would be skipping frames a little bit. And I still notice it a little bit now, but it's definitely much less pronounced. Like if I move my hand, you can see that there's no glitchiness. Everything seems to be nice and smooth. So I'm happy with the purchase. Spent more than I wanted to, but I saved up for it, and it's here now. So we're good with that. That's number one. Number two, I want to talk about some of the things that have been going on over at Instagram. So the head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, recently came out with a video that got a lot of people talking, ruffled some feathers. And basically, he was mentioning some things that are coming due or that are coming up. There are going to be some changes to the Instagram app. And one of the things that he said, well, there's a few things that he said. We'll go over those. But, for example, he said Instagram is no longer a photo sharing app. And I think we're seeing that a lot more with social media platforms these days, where we're kind of moving away from photos and more towards video. And why? Because video is what makes the most money for these people. Video attracts more attention. You can, sell more ads on video, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. So everyone's kind of competing on video. Now, some of the things he said in the video that he posted, though, were a little bit, like I said, they ruffled some feathers. And there's a creator, Chris Hau. He put up a good video that really details, and I agree with basically everything that he was saying. There's a link in the description below if you want to check it out. But what what Adam Mosseri was saying is that, they have to compete. Obviously people come to Instagram to be entertained, and what Chris was saying is that a lot of people are ditching Instagram and going to these other platforms like YouTube, like TikTok. The reason being, creators can go there and be paid. Instagram's talking about, well, we need to implement more video features, and we need to focus more on the things that are trendy right now and the things that are people are enjoying doing. And Chris's take was, that's not why people are leaving Instagram for these other platforms. The reason they're leaving is because the content on Instagram is no longer, it's not as good comparable to TikTok. Think of this. When you go on TikTok Reels, which is a relatively new feature to Instagram, if you look at a lot of the Reels that are there, most of them come from TikTok, because that's where the good original content lives. People go create content for TikTok first, and then they take that content and they repurpose it over on Instagram or, elsewhere. And that's because, TikTok has the creator fund. When you think of YouTube, who recently implemented YouTube Shorts, which is kind of, a similar type setup like TikTok. If you're creating on YouTube, whether it's a short or full-size video, YouTube is sharing its ad revenue with creators, and again, then incentivizing them to create better content and to focus on that platform more than they might others. On Instagram, you're not getting that. They're not compensating creators. They're not incentivizing them to come to the platform and make awesome content. And therefore, creators who are realizing that they can go elsewhere and make a couple bucks potentially here and there, they're leaving the platform because they don't have those incentives. And I 100% believe or agree with that. And I think, Instagram's going to be in some deep water if they want to continually try to just throw a bunch of additional features and things like that at us, because that's not what creators want these days. A new creator economy is here. All right, Robert, thanks for chiming in. Creators, there's a new creator economy, and creators are realizing that they can, if not make a career out of being a content creator, they can at least make some money. And that's kind of where we're going now. And I think a lot of these platforms that aren't going to follow that roadmap are going to fall behind. And I think Instagram is at risk of that. So I don't know. We'll see where that goes. But go check out Chris's video. He illustrates those points much better than I have. So check that out. Link is in the description. So that's Instagram. Let's wet the whistle a little bit here. Drinking a Gatorade Zero Berry flavor today, because you got to stay hydrated in this 100-degree Las Vegas heat. It's actually been cooler lately. It was 118 not long ago, and that's hot. Humidity or not, 118 degrees is very hot. So let's move on and talk about the main topic of this week's episode, which is gear. Does it matter? Well, of course it matters, except for when it doesn't matter. So the age-old question of does gear matter is a question that I lump in with what camera should I buy? It's such a broad question, and there's no one right answer for any of it. I think a better question, and by the way, this is probably going to be a little bit all over the place because I have a lot of thoughts on all of this and a lot of notes to go over. And as I typically do, I like to jump around. But for me, the better question, a better question than does gear matter is, what am I creating and what can I accomplish with the gear that I have? There's a lot of different types of content you can create with any number of combinations of pieces of gear that you might have. Are you creating social media content? Are you doing advertising for TV? Are you doing full length cinematic movies? Like it really comes down to what you're creating. But I think people fixate on whether or not they fixate too much on whether or not the gear that they have is enough. Now, I am a self-admitted I have gas, as they call it, gear acquisition syndrome, although I would say I'm a recovering gasaholic or whatever you want to call it. I've accumulated quite a bit of gear, a lot of it which currently is collecting dust. But, I fell into that trap where, especially when I was kind of starting my career and getting some side work and learning more and building my skills, it's like, oh, I got to have that now. I got to have this now. And at a certain, I'm now at the point where, yeah, occasionally I'll pick up something new here and there, like a graphics card, little things that are going to make my productivity a little bit better. But my main shooter is a Sony a7 III. And that camera now, by some people's standards, is a little bit outdated. It's 2 or 3 years old at this point. And I know that, if I want better quality video, let's say if I want a camera that's better in low light, or, the max resolution and frame rate on this is 4K at 30 frames per second. I know that if I wanted to upgrade, say, to the A7S III, I could get 4K 120 frames per second, and I could get 10-bit, 10-bit video files, and I think it might even shoot RAW at some resolutions, if I'm not mistaken. But as much as I would like to have a Sony a7 III, and I could technically afford it if I want to, I don't have a need for it anymore. I'm not doing a whole lot of client work, and the client work that I am doing is, lately at least, has been a lot of photography or just some simple video work and like videography. This is kind of this is the main type of content that I'm creating these days, this podcast here. And, I've already got all the gear that I need for this. But at this point in my career, I don't need to upgrade my cameras. I'm fine with what I can get. I'm fine working with what I have now. And, I thought it might be a good idea to talk about some of the ways that gear has not been that important in my career up to this point. Because, again, people fixate a lot on whether or not, I think everyone's looking for that small incremental increase in quality that really, for most people, is just going to be noticeable to them. If I shot a video on my Sony a7 III and then went out and shot the same identical video on a Sony a7S III, would anyone on YouTube or wherever it gets posted know the difference between those two cameras? Probably not. You'd have to probably have a very trained eye to notice the difference. And, in my case, when I create YouTube content, I'm not creating content for those top tier experts. I'm creating content for the people who are learning how to create better content. They're kind of on the way up. So, but there's, for example, I've mentioned this before. I travel a lot to go see boxers. I work in boxing by day. And when I go see these fighters, the goal is to capture as much content, B-roll, photos, and interview footage, capture as much of that as I can, but do it with as much quality as I can as well, given what I have. Now, the thing is with these fighter visits is most of the time I'm traveling solo. And yes, technically, I could probably pack some big Pelican cases and put a bunch of more pro gear in them. But to travel solo with all of that gear in the fast-paced environment of a training camp is not easy. So I would much rather simplify, size down, take maybe some less pro gear, and make that work. So when I go to a training camp, I'm typically bringing 2 cameras, one of them being my Sony a7 III. The other lately has been the Sony ZV-1, and this is the camera that I bring as basically like a secondary, a B cam when I'm doing interview footage, or maybe for other purposes if needed, but mostly just a B cam for interviews. I'm bringing a single light source for interview footage that I do with a compact travel light stand that fits into about a form factor of like this, that fits, right in my luggage. I'm bringing one lavalier mic that's kind of has a built-in recorder that I can attach to the fighter. I'm bringing a shotgun microphone that I can put on top of my camera just to capture some audio that's going on. And really outside of that, that's it. And a tripod for my camera when we do maybe 2 tripods, one for each camera for when I do the interview stuff. And that's it. And there's been times when the content that I create is used by the networks that are putting on, they're handling the production of the shows, because I'm able to go there and capture this high quality footage, high quality enough for networks to want to take it and use it for their purposes. And I'm not using cinema quality gear. I often go on these trips and I'll be there at the same time as, say, the networks, the network production companies when they're there, getting footage for their shoulder programming, their shoulder programming. And they're shooting with Red cameras or Alexas, like the big stuff. And I'm just sitting there with my Sony a7 III handheld with a shotgun microphone on it. And I'm able to get maybe not the same quality, but I'm able to get decently comparable quality. And, some of that comes down to skill and how to use the tools. But, again, it just goes to show you, despite the big, quality and price gap between some of these tools, perceived quality, that gap for the average person is not that big, So there's that. Fighter camps. There was a shoot that I did. This is a good example. I did a shoot for, it was basically a display ad, a video display ad that was going to be shown inside a casino here in the Las Vegas Strip for a restaurant called Lobster Me. And they wanted to do some kind of slow-mo footage of one of their lobster rolls being put together. And I shot it with this camera that I'm currently filming myself on now, which is the Sony a6500. And I used this camera, a tripod, 2 of these like old and big but really cheap LED video lights, a couple light stands, and a white backdrop. And that looked a little bit like this. Not a little bit. This was the ad. And this showed inside the casino on the kind of their display screens for quite a while. It's a super simple ad, but I shot it on, a budget mirrorless camera. I didn't use any super high quality film gear. That's all I used. Another example of this, not from my career, but, I talked about this a few episodes ago where I went and toured a podcast studio here in town, where they basically have a number of different studios inside their space, where you can rent out and record your own podcasts. And their entire camera system is based around iPhones. So we were in one of their studios. I'm looking around trying to find the cameras. They're using iPhones as their primary cameras. And then when you watch the footage back, you can't tell the difference between that and a high quality camera. Now, granted, they had quality lighting and they had set dressing and stuff like that and other production elements in place. But the point being, they're not using these high-end cameras, but they are producing a high-end product that looks great. So yeah, and to go back earlier, talking specifically about social media content, there seems to be a shift happening in the type of content that people are creating. And maybe not a shift that is just recently happening. It seems like, especially in the TikTok era, and Instagram Reels era, it's happening more and more these days. And that is that people are creating content intentionally with that raw feel. So, majority of TikTok videos, if you're a big TikTok fan like I am, if you're scrolling on TikTok, you're not seeing videos that are made with high quality camera gear and things like that. You're seeing videos that are filmed from people who, they just pick up their phone and point it at their faces. And there was Peter McKinnon, to quote another creator, linked to his video that I'm about to mention in the description below as well. But Peter McKinnon did an experiment where he filmed basically the same video twice, filmed it once and with all of his souped up camera gear and dramatic lighting and voiceover and everything like that. And it was a video that he shot of this kind of vintage coffee maker thing. And then he did the same video. A little bit different as far as script and stuff like that, but basically the same video, but this time he just shot it on his iPhone and did it super raw. And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but the views that he was getting on each of those videos was very similar. And, his thought was, one of his thoughts was, well, maybe, like if you see something that's super highly produced, more and more these days, you would assume that it's an ad. If someone comes in with a high quality camera now, like because there's so much of this raw content out there and because it's so engaging and entertaining, when you see now the high quality stuff, you may be more inclined to think that that might be an ad, or whatever. But it's interesting to see where creators are moving and how the platforms are changing the behavior. So for everyone who's out there, they're trying to produce super high quality stuff. I think more, there's going to be a shift there, and people are going to start to step back and realize, okay, I don't need to do this anymore. If I want to make this a career, or if I want to make a little bit of money on the side doing this, I don't need to go out and buy a bunch of gear because, this is all I need. I can do a lot from right here. And that's really cool, and that's really empowering for a lot of people. If you've spent a lot of your career building your gear base, and of course, obviously, like if you're just a creator, that's one thing. But if you're, obviously, if you're creating content or ads or things like that for bigger businesses, you're going to need some different gear. But like if you're just a content creator, what's the incentive for you to go out and spend a bunch of money and invest in a bunch of super high quality gear at this point anymore? Of course, it's case by case, but that could be where we're going. We may not see much of that super high, high quality produced stuff as much as we used to in the past, and we're already seeing less of it. So that's really interesting to me. Now, obviously, all that to say that, yes, gear matters. You need gear to accomplish things, but in a lot of cases, it doesn't matter. Gear could just be your phone. Gear could be, just whatever camera you happen to have. It doesn't have to be all of this. Like I said, I've spent years accumulating all of this gear. This does not just come out of nowhere. Now, all the gear that I have in here for what I want to do is necessary, but if I was going to do this again and do it on a budget, I'd probably just do the one camera here. I've got a couple of these additional monitors to help me see. I probably wouldn't. I don't need those. I don't necessarily need this ATEM switcher. I definitely don't need a soundboard this big. Like these things are all not necessary, but for me, because I wanted to focus on quality, I have them, and it took me a little while to get them, but I have them now. So gear though does matter at times, and where it does matter is really when it comes down to the more specialty stuff. Like are you shooting a full length feature film? If you're going to be shooting a cinematic film, you're going to need the high-end cameras. You're going to need high-end lenses. You're going to need precise image control, which means you're going to need a crew of people helping to, direct scenes and, focusing your cameras and things like that. The cameras that you shoot with are going to have to produce really high quality video files that have a lot of flexibility in editing, so you can have the exact creative look that you're going for. You're going to have quality lighting that you can manipulate and change depending on what the scene is all about. Obviously, there have been people that have, Blair Witch, if you recall that was, I don't know what that was shot on, but it was such a simple shoot. There's going to be some variability in that space, but for the most part, again, if you're shooting, like some big dramatic feature film, you're going to require a lot of this more souped up gear. Specialty shoots, for example, macro photography, not most lenses that people will buy will allow you to shoot macro photography, being, by the way, like, if you want to shoot something that's very small and high detail, you'll need some kind of macro photography lens or macro adapter. You've probably seen these probe lenses that are like this long that let you kind of shoot into, between the pages of a book, or maybe between plants or into a bottle or something like that. That's obviously something that will require a special tool. There are camera robots, MKBHD has one that, if you want those super precise movements and shots and things like that, there are certain circumstances where specialized gear is super important. But in those cases, first of all, in most cases, unless you do that all the time, those things are very infrequent, and you can just rent the stuff if you need to. You know what I mean? But that kind of leads me to, and by the way, speaking of camera robots, Daniel Schiffer, if you're not subscribed to him, he does a lot of interesting videos. He creates a lot. He creates a lot of branded style content that looks like it might have been done in an environment where they had some kind of, camera robot or, other machinery that helps with precise movements. But he does it with, again, just kind of I think he has a Sony A7S III, a couple of lights, and then he's using whatever gear he has available to him. Very creative stuff over there. But at the end of the day, again, if you're a content creator, 99% of content that you will probably make over your content creation career can be accomplished with a very small list of gear. And if I was going to start from scratch and accumulate the gear that I would need to create content that I want to create, I would go with a few things. So here's the list of gear that I would suggest. And if you have this gear, you're basically good to go. I would get really any mirrorless camera that was made by one of the top camera manufacturers over the last couple of years. I say mirrorless just because they're smaller, but also because that's kind of where the camera industry is going. But mirrorless, like the Sony A7 III is a great mirrorless camera. Get a lens, a well-rounded lens. You could do just about everything you need to do with a 24 to 70 millimeter lens, f2.8. It's going to let in a good amount of light. It's going to give you some focal range to play with a little bit. It gets decently wide. It gets decently telephoto. It's a good, just kind of all-around lens. Get yourself a decent video light. This one, again, just barely, you can just kind of barely see it, but I've showed it before. It's my Godox SL60W, and that combined with the softbox is maybe $200. And it's not the most high-end video light out there, but it produces a decent quality light, and it's cheap, and it works really well. Get yourself one of those if you want to do any content that's similar to this kind of talking head stuff. Get it maybe a smaller light that you can put on top of a camera for run and gun style shooting. A tripod is obviously also handy if you're doing content that focuses on you or any static camera content. Pick up a shotgun mic, a cheap shotgun mic, the one that I've been really hyped on lately is this Deity D4 Duo. I like it because you can record audio in front and behind of the mic. So that's helpful. And I think it's $90, not that expensive. Get a lavalier mic. This can be helpful for instances where, let's say you want to film yourself or someone else and they're not near the camera, or maybe there's a lot of noise going on. The lavalier mic, which is in my camera bag right now that I can't get to, but the lavalier mic that I recommend and that I use all the time is the Tascam DR10L, which is a lavalier mic and recorder combo. So you literally just clip it on, put the recorder in your pocket behind you, and it'll record right into that versus having to, wirelessly send a signal to something else or record into an external audio recorder. Get yourself a decent camera bag. I've gone through a few different camera bags over the years, and having a camera bag, I would suggest spending a little bit more on a good quality camera bag that can last you. The Peak Design Everyday, no, the Peak Design Travel backpack is the one that I bring on trips on trips when I go, and that backpack with fully loaded with gear and everything will regularly weigh anywhere from like 25 to 40 pounds. And that thing is held up through everything. No rips, no tears, no issues with zippers, nothing. And I may have paid, maybe $275 for it, something around that. But had I gotten something cheaper, guaranteed I would have had to replace it by now and probably would have already spent more than I spent on that one bag. So I would recommend a high quality camera bag. And beyond that, get yourself some kind of computer. Get a used laptop or a used PC if you need to, something that can help you with, editing and processing all of your footage and photos and things like that. And then lastly, editing tools. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to pay $53 a month for the Adobe product suite or, some of these other expensive programs. There are plenty of free options out there. DaVinci Resolve has a free editing tool that you can use that's very full featured. If you're into audio, there's Audacity, which is a pretty full featured audio editor. Just takes a little bit of research to look and see what's out there, but there's lots of free tools out there. And again, accumulating this gear takes time, but if you're anything like me, when you get to a certain point, you'll realize that you have enough and that you don't need to go beyond that. You don't need to continually, keep upgrading constantly. So at the end of the day, does gear matter? Yes, of course, gear matters, but it doesn't matter as much as you think, and you can accomplish a lot more with what you have than you may be led to believe. So there we go. That's kind of my take on the whole gear question. My advice is stop worrying about it. Stop chasing that incremental quality, that boost in quality, that incremental just jump. No one's going to notice the difference between the low light performance of your A7 III versus your A7S III, for example. I just use those two examples because those are the cameras that I'm kind of familiar with in that space. But nobody's going to notice that. If you're going to upgrade your gear, stop and think and wait for an opportunity where an increase in gear is going to take your quality to the next level. I'm trying to think, like, for me, like a stabilizer, like a gimbal or stabilizer for a lot of people is worth that investment, especially if you do a lot of filming where you're moving around a lot and you're doing a lot of walking or you're following subjects. A gimbal stabilizer is going to could be a big upgrade in quality for you because it's going to stabilize that footage a lot better than you would if you were walking on, just on your feet and trying to hold the camera still. Similarly, if you are someone who you want to start getting some aerial shots, you could put your camera on the end of a long pole and walk around like that, or you could buy a Mavic, a Mavic drone with a camera on it, and that may be the big upgrade that you need. Now, once you have that drone, do you need to upgrade to the new drone that's coming out the next year? Probably not, because that drone is going to last you for a while, and the quality that it produces, assuming you get a decent quality drone, is going to last for a number of years. So just calm down. Everybody calm down. It's going to be fine. You don't need the next new shiny thing. I know it's hard to hold off sometimes, but just trust me. You can do it. So that's my take on gear. So anyway, I hope that was helpful and insightful to some of you. I hope I saved a few of you some dollars and have convinced you to not do that upgrade on that camera or whatever it is that you're looking to upgrade on. But if you did find some value today, if I helped you out, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you happen to be watching or listening, and follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram and Twitter. Posting some stuff over there. Feel free to swing by, say hello, ask a question, whatever floats your boat. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and call this one done. So, yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Fade to black. Bye-bye.